What's happening, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here. Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Buffalo Bills post-game reaction show. The Bills fall to the Miami Dolphins 21-19. This is one of those games that this is a tough one. This is a tough pill to swallow for a wide variety of reasons. And I'll start off with the simple fact of the matter that the Buffalo Bills lost this one due to a ton of missed opportunities. They had the opportunity to win this game on multiple instances and were unable to do so. And you know what? I will do the quote-unquote tip of the cap to the Miami Dolphins and say that Mike McDaniel, Tua, will just give respect where credit is, give credit where credit is due. They did need to play the quote-unquote perfect game, and I don't think they did in certain instances, but in the majority of instances throughout this game, I felt like they did play a game plan that they stuck to throughout the four quarters of play. Holding the Buffalo Bills offense to 19 points is an achievement that many teams have been unable to accomplish. And I want to just be a sportsman, give credit where credit is due in this post-game recap show to start things off. And I got quite a few people on my Facebook tuning in. People tuning in on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page, which, those are the comments that I'll see the most, being that, I'm keeping my eyes on my page every time I'm on here. But watching the game today, this is one that's a tough one. I will say that I'm rendered speechless in certain aspects of this one. And leading up to the action, I knew that this game would be difficult, due in large part to the fact that the Bills didn't have Poyer, didn't have Hyde, and had a wide variety of injuries across the board that I think will drastically hurt their chances. And it's not a slight on Damar Hamlin or Jaquan Johnson, but they're not Jordan Poyer and they're not Micah Hyde, which is arguably the best safety tandem in the NFL, and it has been, for the last 5 or 6 years. This is about when a guy goes down, who can step up, and I thought Christian Benford and Kyer Elam played pretty well, but there's a moment that comes to mind in this game, 3rd and 22, Tua drops back, he fires a dart down the center of the field that fooled the safeties. The route fooled the safeties from Jalen Waddle. And I think this shows 19 plays. The one statistic that really, 19 points, I should say. The one statistic that jumps out at me is the amount of total plays that the Buffalo Bills had on offense. 90 plays to Miami's 39. And you saw throughout the game, moments of heat exhaustion. 89 come kickoff felt like, 95 to 100. Maybe even higher than that at certain points in the game when the sun, was on the majority of the field. I really don't want to use that as an excuse because I don't think it's a valid one. It might be valid in the sense that, it did take part in the game, but I don't want to pin this loss on that because this loss is about a lot of things that I witnessed tonight or today. So I think a lot of Bills fans are going to come away with this one feeling sick to their stomach, as I do right now, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Ken Dorsey in the booth, I felt like called a game that was as best as he could call it, given the situation, given guys going down left and right. We're going to change the brand a little bit, going from blue to red. I just want a red banner here. I feel like Ken Dorsey's frustration is everyone's frustration right now. I don't know how Isaiah McKenzie didn't get out of bounds on that last play of the game. I don't know how Josh Allen didn't find McKenzie when he was open in the end zone or over the middle of the field on the replay. You saw how wide open Devin Singletary was. This was a game where I did see Allen revert to somewhat of his panic mode that he was notorious for his first couple of years in the league, trying to do too much, not taking what the defense gives him. And me saying that, you guys are going to, respond, and I want you to, with this answer that Allen was 42 of 63, 400 yards, 2 tutties, and a 94.7 quarterback rating. Josh Allen played a great game, but 42 of 63. The key statistic among the passing yards, among the touchdowns, among the quarterback rating is 63 pass attempts. The next key statistic in this one that I want to highlight is Allen 8 carries for 47 yards, the leading rusher, again, on this team. When are we going to have any consistency within the run game? And you would think that James Cook would be that guy, being that they picked him, that would help that fact. But James Cook, 1 carry for 3 yards on the day, receiving. We had a lot of guys going down left and right in this game, most notably Stephon Diggs, who looked like he just couldn't get his legs under him. Stephon Diggs, 7 of 74. Isaiah McKenzie, 7 for 76. And Devin Singletary, 9 of 78, the leading receiver on the day. He had a receiving touchdown, as did McKenzie. Diggs was held out of the end zone. So, mission accomplished by the Miami Dolphins, keeping Stephon Diggs out of the end zone. I will say that Teron Johnson played a great game today. Tremaine Edmonds played one of his better games today as well. Kyer Elam and Christian Benford played pretty well. But overall, this was one that I think in small moments, I can't say the Dolphins won this one. This was a game that the Bills were their own worst enemy. They got in their way. And to take words out of the mouth of Doug Clark, he says, I give credit to the Dolphins, but they by no means won this game as much as the Bills gave up this game. And I completely agree with him. And fire your comments away in the comments section below, whether you're tuning in, wherever you're tuning in. I will get to your comments. Gene Hoffman putting a lot of comments on here. Sickening feeling, disgusting game. Bobby Nelson said, should not have tried to get cute on the goal line. Run with a fullback dive with 1 yard to go. Hope they learned that. Reminded me of Seattle Super Bowl feeling. And, I think a lot of fans right now are rightfully so going through all these scenarios in which they just let this game kind of fall by the wayside. They had so many opportunities in this game to seal the deal, to put a nail in the coffin of the Miami Dolphins, and they were just unable to do it. I do want to say, and take it for what it's worth, I do want to say there were moments in this game where Josh Allen looked rattled, looked frazzled, and looked very frustrated. And one of those moments that really hurt the team was a moment in which I believe it was Christian Wilkins, who was a former defensive tackle out of Clemson. Rumors are swirling that Christian Wilkins punched Josh Allen in the groin, and Josh Allen freaked out, flipped out, and tore his helmet off and got in his face and stuff like that in that scrum, beyond that scrum. And then, the refs, shortly thereafter, when Allen reacted, the refs threw a flag. Those moments can't happen. And there were a lot of moments where I felt like Buffalo could have had flags, could have had opportunities. There were opportunities where Miami did take opportunities to hold, did take opportunities to show that unnecessary roughness, if you will, and the refs weren't calling it. And it was getting called. The second to last play of the game was a holding call on Buffalo. It just didn't seem like a fairly called game on both sides. And I rarely say things like that, but I'm saying it. It was one of those games where I haven't seen in quite some time reffing that isn't balanced. It goes one way or nothing. It was all Buffalo, not many play calls, not many flags, I should say, on the Dolphins. Charles Asukwo says Buffalo was the better team. We should have never lost that game. Dean Thomas Shout out to my dad. He says that's football. If you play to the level of your opponent, not your game, you lose more often than not. You think this team doesn't have pressure? Come on. They definitely do have pressure. And the pressure, however he's wording it, I'm just going to assume that the pressure is unlike any other. The expectations of this team have never been higher in my lifetime. And I think this was a game where the writing was somewhat on the wall in terms of the build up to this game. 2-0 versus 2-0. We're going to Miami, playing in that heat, down a handful of guys that are crucial and essential to what we do defensively. And given all that, given everything that was stacked against the Bills, moral victory in defeat, you can say whatever you want, 21-19. I mean, we had so many opportunities to win this game despite what was stacked against us. I don't know what to chalk it up to. If I can chalk it up to any one thing, I can chalk it up to many, many different parts and facets of this game. Arcadius said Morse being out really hurt as well. I think that changed their approach in terms of the run game. And Devin Singletary did step up when he needed to in ways that I think he's always been able to step up. He just was never really given that full-fledged opportunity to step up via the passing game and the flat. So checking the tape on it, there's a lot of people commenting that Christian Wilkins was grabbing Josh Allen's groin area. If that's the case, I didn't see it, but if that's the case, why was that not called? And why was Allen penalized? I mean, obviously, he ripped Christian Wilkins' helmet off. That's why he was penalized, but why was that not a two-way street? Very frustrating, to say the least. Moving on from this one, looking ahead, Buffalo playing Baltimore next week, and the Ravens, you never really know what you're going to get. Lamar Jackson one week could look like the former MVP of the NFL. The next week, he looks like he's a one-dimensional quarterback. And I think that Mark Andrews right now, along with Travis Kelce, are probably the top two tight ends in the league. I think Mark Andrews has actually supplanted George Kittle as the second best. I'll give that top spot to Travis Kelce for now. But Mark Andrews went off today. He's gone off, plenty of times over the course of his career, and it just seems like now he's getting the recognition that he deserves. And that could potentially be a big problem in terms of what Buffalo has stacked against them defensively. They need to get Jordan Poyer back. They need to get Jordan Phillips back. They need to get Trey White back. And even if they do get those guys back, though, there could be somewhat of an adjustment period from those guys being back, moved back to health. Will they be actually at 100%? Adjustments, I felt like, are definitely going to need to be made defensively. Big chunk plays, 3rd and 22. Tua drops back and fires a dime of a pass over the middle to Jalen Waddle, putting it inside the 5. And those things those moments where Miami needed to make plays, they did. The moments where Buffalo needed to make plays, they didn't. And I thought the game was over in that 1 minute 37 second range, and as soon as Miami's punter was punting out of the end zone, they were pinned into their own territory, of course. I hoped and prayed that the punter would flub the punt and it would be a safety, and it was. And we had a lot of time to get into field goal range, 21-19, and we ran out of time. I think Miami was very good at not giving us the sideline, which is something that Tennessee did do for us. They made really good adjustments in the second half to not allow Buffalo, to work the sidelines. Allen had a real tough time with that, especially when the pressure was weighing in on him, and the offensive linemen were dropping like flies in this one. The Bills lost 3 offensive linemen over the course of this game. Going into it, as mentioned by one of the commenters here, Mitch Morse wasn't playing in this one, and Van Rotten was for lack of a better term, rotten as a center today. And there was a lot of missed opportunities due to no field goal towards the tail end of the half, a missed field goal, and no field goal, obviously, to end the game that would have put the Bills in position to win it. Tyler Bass would have been kicking a 45, 50-yard field goal, maybe a little bit more than 50 yards, to potentially win the game for the Buffalo Bills. And a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of given opportunities by Miami defensively to Buffalo's offense, and Buffalo just came up short. Just a weird game all around. I felt like Allen just, despite the stat line, 42 of 63, he had to throw the ball 63 times because they never really established a run game, and they didn't really try to. And I feel like sometimes when they have these injuries up front, they just decide not to run. And they're like, well, we're going to work it with Allen and work with the guys we got and just abandon the run game. And I don't think you can do that in this league and win, regardless of the year, regardless of anything. We got Arcadius on here. He says, in my opinion, the clock shouldn't tick when it's in the hands of the refs. Took them 8 seconds to put the ball down. I mean, Isaiah McKenzie didn't get out of bounds. He's running the ball over, bumps into somebody. Somebody purposely got in his way because Miami's Miami. And, yeah, it is what it is. All we can do now is just build off of it. It's all about winning, not all week 1 to 17. Now is when we see if the Bills really want it all. Time to move a few picks in next year's draft. And I remember doing the post-draft show where I look at the class of players at the Bills draft, and I look at it top to bottom, and I say, okay, how do I grade this pick? Kaiir Elam, I really liked him coming out of Florida. And I liked James Cook too, but if I could go back and play devil's advocate a little bit, or be a different version of Brandon Beane, we'll just say I'm Brandon Beane for this segment, for this argument, I would probably do the James Cook pick over again as of now and draft a legitimate force of a safety in the event that my 32-year-old and 33 or 31, 32, 33-year-old safeties go down. Micah Hyde for the season, Jordan Poyer, no estimated time on his return, God willing, hopefully next week, but those are moves that shoulda, coulda, woulda. I'm not saying I don't like James Cook. I definitely do. But the lack of depth in the back end, I think, is going to be a problem when they're going up against a team like Miami, which they will have to play again when they're going up against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, with or without Tyreek Hill. They're still able to move the ball pretty well, despite actually being beat by the Colts today, which I was happy to see that take place at the very least. Jordan Miller says that he is deceased. Well, we don't want that, Jordan. I would say to Jordan, he posted a status earlier today that I agreed with, that the big question in this one was the injuries that they had and how would they adjust. And for the first half, largely Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill were neutralized and shut down. But the adjustments in the second half were all about those safeties. I mean, corners are corners, safeties are over the top. They were getting burned over the top here and there in moments in the game. And I felt like there were a few penalties that were called that put the Dolphins in a real good position that were very debatable. One of those penalties, an unnecessary roughness that was on the Bills. Teron Johnson was in line with the receiver, and the ball was incomplete, but Teron Johnson had nowhere to go. And the commentator said, oh, he lowered his shoulder. I didn't see that. I just saw two guys collide, and that was that. All right. Doug Clark said, the one thing that really shocked me was how quickly Tua returned from getting injured at the end of the first half. And in those moments, those quarterbacks that are, clanging their head off the turf like Tua did, post Matt Milano kind of giving him a little bit of an extra shove, I thought Tua went into the tunnel, went through concussion protocol. That's what they stated, at least, in the broadcast. And concussion protocol is one of those things that the majority of the time when a guy goes through concussion protocol, he doesn't return just as a precaution. So I agree with you, Doug, that I didn't anticipate Tua coming back in for the action, and he did. And honestly, I don't think Tua would be doing what he's doing if he didn't have the supporting cast around him. There's a reason why Miami felt the need to go, pay a king's ransom, if you will, for Tyreek Hill, whether it was the draft picks or the extension or both, what they gave up to get a Tyreek Hill. They did that for a reason. They had to do that. If they didn't make that move, they were going to be in the same exact spot offensively that they were a season ago, regardless of Brian Flores out and Mike McDaniel in. Mike McDaniel took some chances in this one that Brian Flores wouldn't have taken offensively. And maybe Mike McDaniel, being an offensive coach, sees some different dynamics to this offense that Brian Flores, last year a defensive coach, just simply couldn't see based on his experience on the defensive side versus McDaniel's experience on the offensive side. I give full credit in moments of this game to the Dolphins for what they were able to accomplish. Holding Buffalo's offense to 19 points. No one has been able to do that as of the last, 6 times we've seen the Bills play. So it is what it is. It is what it is. Right? So around the NFL action, right now you get the Green Bay Packers taking on the Tampa Bay Bucks. That one is obviously Brady versus Rodgers. That's one that everybody's tuning in to see. And in this one, I think we're gonna assume that one's gonna be a shootout, just based on the quarterbacks that are playing out there. I'll get the score for that. And as I'm looking at that, I want you guys to throw it on your comments and just let me know how you feel in regards to the Bills and the Ravens game. It's one that I think is going to be a very interesting one, especially after this game, against the Dolphins, how that shook out. The Rams are leading the Cardinals 13-6. You got the Jaguars and Chargers battling it out 16-10. Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Herbert. Trevor Lawrence was a guy that I said could potentially have a really good bounce back year. Green Bay leading Tampa Bay 14-3. And I think, man, I thought that would be a better one. I thought Tampa scored a touchdown. They must have called that back. But as I mentioned, Kansas City losing to the Colts. The Arizona Cardinals beating the Raiders in overtime. The San Francisco 49ers 27-7 against Seattle. The Rams beating the... whoops, my bad. I read that wrong. Well, I got a comment on here. So, let me go back here. I got a comment on this Facebook page. 1 minute and 30 seconds, and they couldn't do it. Buffalo flat out beat themselves. It's Brucey Roberts and James Rodriguez. It seems like, I don't know if you guys would agree with me on this, it seems like in the Josh Allen era, it seems like the losses are just so devastating and so heartbreaking that I wish, if they were to lose, I don't want to see them get blown out, but man, they lose in just heartbreaking fashion. I don't know how much more I can take of it when it does happen, which is more rare than it used to be, that's for sure. Paragon says it has come out that Tua was having back spasms and passed concussion protocol. And to Paragon, he is a Miami Dolphins fan, and tip of the cap to you. We'll get you next time. We'll see how you guys handle the cold weather compared to us and how we couldn't handle the warm weather, it seems like. Guys just dropping like flies. I'm hoping that Stephon Diggs is okay and that he's not actually injured and it was just exhaustion. Not that I would want Diggs to be exhausted at any point in the game, but he fell to the ground at one point, was just completely gassed in this one. So I'll be sure to be on the podcast once again, recapping the action of this week's NFL football action, and Doug Clark kind of responding to Paragon that Tom Pelissaro reported that the NFL is looking into the Dolphins' handling of that whole situation. So could there be some dirty tactics by the Dolphins? It wouldn't shock me, to say the least, given what we saw in moments in today's game. I don't feel like the Dolphins played a clean game defensively. Felt like there was a lot of moments in the game where they were targeting Allen, trying to take him out of the game, due in large part maybe to the fact that Matt Milano did push Tua, 1 or 2 seconds after he got rid of that ball, and put him out of the game. This is a rivalry now, and I say that, and people are like, "Oh, it's Bills Dolphins." It's always been a rivalry. Not always. This rivalry has been largely dead over the course of the last decade, and now it's back in full swing. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. I really appreciate it. That is my Bills recap show. The Bills fall to 2-1 against the Miami Dolphins by a score of 21-19. Onward and upward, as they say. The Bills taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Next time, week 4, I'm actually going to be going to a wedding, so I won't be here to give a recap for that, but I'll be sure to do that at some point during the rest of the week. This was a tough one, tough pill to swallow. Frankly, I'll go back and check the tape and see, as Sean McDermott says, and see what, I feel like they could have done a little bit better. A lot of it is fresh in my mind. It's just that I can't really give the Dolphins as much credit as I'm willing to, as much as I already have. I feel like this was a game that the Bills could have easily won, and they missed out on a lot of opportunities. And when you do that, when you shoot yourself in the foot, you're not going to go very far. So there you have it. Go Bills. Take care, and thanks for tuning in.